Today we're going to discuss oil sampling and why do we need to do oil sampling. Number one, why do we need oil samples? Well, each component manufacturer has a recommendation as to how clean the oil should be so they get maximum life out of their components. Now, gear pumps are a little more dirt tolerant than piston pumps and proportional valves. So you have to have at least a baseline to know where we're starting at before we can do proper filtration or any kind of predictive or preventive maintenance. Now, doing oil samples is different techniques of doing them. One of the best ways of doing them is an inline particle counter. If you can do that and you have that available to you, that's the ideal way to do sampling. If not, most people can either go into the reservoir and take samples from the reservoir, or you can do it with a sampling valve that may be built into the system, or you may build into the system. But again, now there's techniques of doing this. One of the things you need to do is to at least start the machine and warm the oil to its operating temperature and cycle the system so you get the dirt stirred up in the reservoir and you get anything that's in the lines bringing back and forth into the system. If you don't do it this way, if you let it sit, your particle counts are going to show clean oil, because if you take it out of the reservoir, the oil is in a steady state just laying there and the dirt will drop out of the oil, so your sample will show it to be relatively clean when in fact it's not. Now, new oil, people say, I have new oil in the system. Well, new oil is not really that clean. New oil is okay with gear pumps, but it's not okay with piston pumps or proportional valves. So you have to know where you start at. Here we have 3 oil samples, and as you can see by looking at them, you can't tell how dirty they are. They all look the same. But if you look at the one on the left, it's a 22-2016, which is extremely dirty oil. And then if you look one in the middle, it is an 18-17-13, which is much cleaner oil. It would work very well with gear pumps and dirt tolerant systems. And the next one is a 15-14-10, extremely clean oil. But looking at all 3 of them, you cannot tell which one is the dirtiest one. This is why we do particle counting, and this is why we talk about, microscopic particles. So if you have this oil, you cannot pick it up and look at it and say, oh, this is really clean, because it isn't always clean. This is one of the sampling techniques. This is basically a reservoir type sampling unit using an oil thief and a sample bottle. This unit also has, sometimes you'll find it has a weighted hose, or it has a tube like this one does, where you can insert it down into the reservoir about halfway to pull a sample. The bottle here attaches to the end of the sampling device right here. So what happens is we pull the sample by pulling the handle back on this, and it brings the oil up through the tube and into the bottle. But still, the first sample has to be dumped, and you should dump this about 3 or 4 times, because what you're doing is cleaning out any debris that may be in the hoses or in the sampling pump itself, or if there's anything that you may have inadvertently gotten into the bottle. Remember, we're talking microscopic particles here, as we said, about an aspirin tablet to contaminate 55 gallons. So you have to be careful how you do this. So if you dump the sample bottle a few times, you can be pretty well assured that you've got a good sample. Okay, again, here's another sampling technique. This basically is a high pressure sampling technique. You can use it high pressure or low pressure, but what's nice about this fitting is installed in your system and permanently left there. And at that point, you come in with this hose, connect to it. You don't have to shut the system down to do this. You can connect to it, and you want to have a sampling bottle. This is a Schroeder sampling bottle. It's sent out. It has a mailer. It has a clean bottle inside, but again, you want to flush the hose you're using, because this is just a short hose. You may have a longer hose, and you may have some debris on this fitting when you open it up. So you want to flush this out, and again, go through the same flushing technique as we indicated using the reservoir sampling technique. Then you cap the bottle, put it in its mailer, and send it off. Fill out the form, answer all the questions that are on the form, send it out. Oil sampling has to be done properly. If it's not done properly, then you don't have a representative sample, nor will you ever get a really representative sample. Some people have taken oil samples and put them into a water bottle, into a Pepsi can, a mayonnaise jar, where in fact there are sampling bottles available through Schroeder Industries. These are three samples of what not to send your oil sample in. And in fact, we have received them these various ways, in a soda can, or in a peanut butter jar, or in a water bottle. We've also received them in mayonnaise jars and baby food jars. These are totally contaminated bottles. We also have received them in bottles where people said they have sterilized the bottle, so the sample should be good. Well, sterilizing the bottle does not really eliminate dirt. Sterilizing the bottle basically kills the dirt. So we don't have any live dirt in the sample bottle. So please, when you do this, use recommended sampling bottles and the techniques so you get representative sample. If we receive them in these type of containers, they're useless to you and us, and we've wasted a lot of time and energy. So please, again, I can't stress enough to use the proper bottles and the proper techniques. Right now we're going to pull the sample. You need to pump this a few times to pull the sample. And you want to pull at least 100 milliliters. Once we've pulled the sample, this being a representative sample, you can cap it, send it to your lab, and in a few days you'll have a report back from the lab telling you exactly what your oil is as far as particle counts and ISO codes and water content, and if you do a spectrograph, what the spectrographic analysis shows. And now we're going to show you the technique of doing an inline sampling. This sampling valve is usually installed in the system and left there, and then you can come in with your hose and connect it to the valve very simply. Don't connect it all the way until you get your bottle ready. Take the cap off your bottle, and we take your sampling valve and we screw it in until it tightens up, and now you're taking your sample. And as you notice, it actually is a valve that you can control. So again, you fill the sample bottle 100 milliliters, you dump it out, and then we fill it again. See, it's very simple to do. It's the ideal way of doing it. And again, you fill it until you got 100 milliliters of fluid in it. Dump it a few times. That way you've cleaned out the hose and the valve itself and the bottle, so you will have a representative sample. If you follow the techniques that we have just shown you, and you do all the proper answering of all the questions in the sampling request, you should receive a proper sample report back showing you that your sample is either clean or dirty, and you can then decide which way you want to go as far as filtration is concerned, or where you have to be in order to have your components last indefinitely. Again, what you need to do is you need to look at which is the most critical component in your system and find out what the recommendation from the manufacturer is. In the Schroeder catalog, which you can find online, there are recommendations for various types of pumps, gear pumps, vane pumps, piston pumps, and different types of valves. And these recommendations are from the manufacturers, not from Schroeder Industries. But if you follow these, you should be able to run your system indefinitely without failure because of dirt. So do the proper sampling techniques, and if you have any questions, feel free to pick up the phone and call Schroeder Industries and ask for technical support who can walk you through the proper techniques or send you the needed literature to do the proper sampling. Again, thank you for your time.